Hey Ashley, yeah, to respond to your question in a simpler way, that's why I'm doing a video. It'll be easier to explain my point without having to waste a bunch of time typing back and forth. But yeah, so you saw my post about starch, but the question is, did you actually read it? And did you actually read the clinical science about starch? Because there is the weight of the highest tiers of evidence available in the world, which are, first of all, meta analyses on the clinical hierarchy of evidence scale, which means the weight of the most credible available evidence that we have to at our disposal based on the highest amount of data that we have available. And intuition or hearsay or listening to this or that guru, which I no longer partake in, is not the highest available credible evidence. And so when you ask, okay, but you saw my post about starch, but did you actually read it? Did you actually read the clinical science? I cited at least maybe 20 studies about resistant starch on the human microbiome, which affects everything from mental health from gut health to mental health to behavioral disorders, neurodegenerative behavioral disorders such as autism, anxiety, depression, on and on and on, all resulting from the health of the microbiome, which fruit and veggies are great and can sustain a healthy microbiome. But the primary substrate that prebiotics provide for the gut bacteria, for the gut biome, in resistant starch is their primary source of food. And there are only a few fruits and vegetables, or fruits and actual, fruiting vegetables that contains adequate substantial amounts of prebiotic or resistant starch. And the more resistant starch or resistant fiber, the roughage, the cellulose that our body can't digest, as all the paleo carnivore low carb advocates are always demonizing. That's the whole point of what makes it the healthiest food on the planet. Aside from fruits and vegetables, of course, there are fruits such as bananas that are highly starchy. People, complete idiots like Dr. Sebi. And yes, Dr. Sebi was a complete idiot. He was literally one of the dumbest people I think I've ever heard nutritional health advice from, despite his whatever effects he had on treating people's conditions. That's not the point. The point is not treating people's conditions. The point is being accurate in what is the healthiest and what helps the most people cure chronic conditions all over the world. And the point about that is that the most cutting-edge clinical nutritional physicians, such as plant-based physicians, such as Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Michael Greger, Dr. Pam Popper, Dr. Garth Davis, Dr. Michael Clapper, on and on and on. All of these leading world-changing physicians are the ones on the cutting edge, not Dr. Morse, not Dr. Sebi, aka Alfredo Bowman. These people are not on the cutting edge of bringing the most health and well-being and curing chronic disease to the planet. Dr. Morse claims that he's cured thousands upon thousands of people of cancers and all that, but the problem with those claims is there is no available data to back that up. A few people have cured themselves of these chronic diseases on that lifestyle, and it's a great lifestyle, but there are many, many, many large detrimental flaws to that lifestyle, which is why I no longer am a proponent of Dr. Morse detox protocols. I am a student of the International School of Detoxification, and there are legitimate tenets to that. He is on the right track. He's very advanced in many aspects, such as the health and the lymphatic system. That is great, but there are many things that he's very wrong about. There are many, many, even more things that not Dr. Sebi, aka Alfredo Bowman, was very wrong about, and that was about starch. So I would recommend you actually read the research, study the research, look up clinical nutritional science research about resistant starch gut health, resistant starch health, starch in general, and health. all of the world's longest living, healthiest populations, free of the largest world's leading chronic diseases, the world's leading causes of death in the world, are proportionally the populations that eat the most starch in the forms of legumes, tubers, roots, potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, corns, rice, and on and on and on, what have you. All of these starchy foods, such as the rural Okinawans, the longest living, healthiest population on Earth, up until recently being surpassed by the California Seventh-day Adventist vegan population, who also consume high amounts of starch. The longest living, healthiest populations are the ones that eat the most beans, period. End of story. That's what all the clinical science shows. You can argue otherwise. You can say, oh, but your question, oh, aren't these foods hybrids? The point about that is, so what? Who cares? Not to sound, condescending or anything. I'm not. I'm trying to sternly address these issues that everyone is so confused about and so it just doesn't understand. Is that, so what if they are hybrid foods? Is being a hybrid food automatically bad? No, of course it's not. Hybridizing food has extremely beneficial effects and always has since the dawn of humanity. Humanity has been cultivating and hybridizing food since the dawn of evolution itself. That's how evolution takes place. You crossbreed, you selectively breed species of foods that have the qualities that you desire, and you breed those into existence. It's called eugenics. It's called eugenics, meaning good genes, good genetics. You take the fruits, the veggies that have resistance to cold weather, resistance to pests, the fruits and veggies that have the most nutrition. You cultivate these and you crossbreed them, and you breed them together. You selectively breed them so that you create a food that provides more calories, more nutrition, and on and on and on, and more flavor. So it's not just a detrimental thing. Hybridized foods are not genetically engineered organisms. They're not genetically modified organisms. You're not going in and splicing the DNA of a virus or of a bacterium with the food, and even that necessarily isn't inherently bad in and of itself. It can be, but that's not how you conduct science. It's just blanket statement, over all these sorts of things like, oh, aren't these hybridized foods? So what if they are hybridized foods? That's not a bad thing. That is actually a good thing. Hybridizing foods is a very beneficial practice, always has been since the dawn of cultivation of agriculture and of evolution of humanity, evolution of food, evolution of life, of biology itself. It's eugenics. It's selective breeding. It's like the same reason why you would want to breed with someone who has good genetics, who is strong, who is healthy, who does not have cancer, and you have a baby with that person while not having those diseases, so that your child does not end up with genetic degeneration, which is what has been happening for thousands of years. Is people have been breeding without any understanding of health, nutrition, detoxification before they actually consciously conceive a child. So it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. These are good things. And so I implore you to go back and actually read the science that I provided in those posts, and will continue to provide, because the resistant starch and the science about starch is conclusive. It's there. It's the highest available evidence that we have to date. Dr. Morris's hearsay, his talks, his lectures over YouTube are not going to change that unless he starts actually manning up, putting in the hard work and the hard hours, the hard labor to actually fund some studies, put up some peer-reviewed clinical science. Because what he's doing may be great in a certain way, but it is not science. It is not the way to get to the pinnacle of health and nutritional science. Neither was Dr. Sebi, Alfredo Bowman. So don't even bring up the topic of aren't these foods hybridized, because so what? It makes that point is irrelevant. It has no bearing onto the weight of the evidence or the weight of the argument whatsoever, or the weight of the truth. It doesn't matter whether they're hybridized or not. It makes no difference. So yeah, I would implore you to to up your game, to level up, to catch up to what the most advanced clinical nutritional science and the cutting edge of health and fitness and well-being, and curing chronic disease on this planet is. And coalitions like the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, of all the doctors that I just named off the top of my head, there are so many more and more coming to this forefront every single day as people continue to become aware of the vast body of clinical science around health and nutrition. And so that truth is not going back in the box. It's not going to be put away, and nobody can take it away, like not Dr. Sebi, tried to, with his complete lack of understanding of what starch is, how beneficial it is, how important it is for human health. And so, the other claims is, oh, what about starch and mucus? Well, the other thing about that is, so what? Mucus doesn't cause disease. Mucus is a symptom of inflammation, and the clinical science all shows that enhancing the gut biome diversity and all of these foods dramatically decrease inflammation. Maybe not to the whole extent that raw fruits and veggies do. And so your other point is, oh, well, no other species on Earth cooks its food. So what? That's an irrelevant argument. That is not an argument regarding the actual outcomes, the clinical outcomes of what a health food is and what makes these foods so healthy. The actual outcomes are who are the longest living, healthiest populations, and what is the best way to sustain healthy calories for a long-term whole foods plant-based lifestyle. And you have to include starch to do that. You will not maintain a lifetime of health on a fruitarian diet. And fruitarian doesn't mean entirely fruit. It means a large portion of fruit. So I'm no longer fruitarian, meaning I don't consume only fruit. I consume the majority of my calories from raw fruits and vegetables during the morning and the early hours of the day, but I also consume a large quantity of my calories from the healthiest foods that will keep you full, that will keep you satiated, that will fill the stretch receptors in your stomach, and that will subsist on substrate for your gut bacteria to eat, which is prebiotics, resistant starch, the roughage, the stuff that does not get digested or broken down in the digestive tract. So that is what resistant starch is. That is why it's so important. And just look up resistant starch microbiome, resistant starch gut health. Start to review the actual clinical science, not paleo nutrition blogs, not hearsay from this or that health guru or this or that raw food guru. Most raw foodists, I know you're probably pretty new to this community, but most raw foodists end up falling off the wagon and making all these new videos of why I'm no longer vegan, why veganism doesn't work for me and doesn't work for anyone because everyone is different and everyone is unique, which is entirely not true. There is one healthiest lifestyle for everyone, and that is a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, heavily based on resistant starch and on these starchy staple foods of the healthiest populations of the world, which have been our staple foods ever since the dawn of human evolution. We have been consuming starches, roots, tubers, for well over hundreds of thousands of years. The consummation of grains, wild grains, has been documented for over 100,000 years in human evolution and human species. Not only that, but the entire human evolution, all hominid species. We have developed amylase in our saliva, which is an enzyme made specifically to break down and start pre-digesting starch from the moment it enters our mouth. And these starchy foods, they make us salivate, which the salivation is the beginning process of digestion. So that alone is a biological evolutionary adaptation that suggests that we are now evolving from mainly consuming fruits and raw vegetables to consuming starch, which was what arguably, anthropologically, with the vast body of evidence and science, shows that it was cooking the starches which provided a much denser source of nutrition and calories, long burning calories, that complex carbohydrate that is slow burning. It slowly releases glucose into the bloodstream, which prevents blood glucose spikes, prevents diabetes, cures type 2 diabetes, dramatically improves the conditions of type 1 diabetes. It improves insulin resistance, it lowers insulin It improves insulin sensitivity, and so by far it is the food that we have evolved eating and will continue to evolve eating. And so it does not matter if any other animal has developed the ability to cook their food or not. That is what sets us apart from so many others, and that is what actually fueled largely the growth of the human brain, along with Dr. Tony Wright's research, Left in the Dark, about how fruit also triggered the growth of the human brain. But the freeing up of calories in the form of dense, long burning, clean burning, healthy nutrition in the form of starch, potatoes, legumes, especially, are the foods for longevity. And the longest living populations, traditional populations on Earth, the rural Okinawans, the blue zones of the world, these all consume the largest amounts of starch in the forms of whole grains, legumes, rice, beans, potatoes, yams, corn, etc., what have you. Of course, don't go for GMO. Yeah, genetically engineered is a whole different thing, but hybridized is not a bad thing. Hybridized is a good thing. You want to hybridize your foods to maximize the good qualities of those foods and limit some of the detrimental qualities of those foods, such as being too starchy and having too much fiber to where you don't get a lot of nutrition out of it, but you're getting mostly, just roughage. So you want to get a lot of roughage, but you also want to get a lot of nutrient density. So you have to go by the highest available body of science.